Everybody, welcome to this episode of Coffee with John. Excited to talk to Garrett Gunderson. Garrett, I'm excited to talk to you about your business, your story. I think the listeners will get a lot from it. You're a wealth liberation expert. Your website can be found at garrettgunderson.com. And your tagline is great, live your richest life. And you have a product called Multiplier that we'll talk about in a little bit. Okay, so if somebody goes to garrettgunderson.com, they will hear a lot about your backstory, which I think is beautiful. And the video that you have on it is so well done. And so this is where I kind of want to start this, and you can tell the backstory of this. But here's my question. Is Mrs. Askoff or Miss Askoff, was she in your world, was she a teacher or a villain?
Teacher. I mean, she didn't do anything wrong. She did what she said she was going to do. You know, she said, memorize your address and we'll give you back your art project, which was a replica of my little house that I wanted to show my mom. And I didn't memorize my address, so she threw it away. And, you know, so some might see that as a villain, but it's just consequences.
Well, you know, I read a book when I watched your video. It reminded me of a book, a children's book, actually, called The Little Soul in the Sun. Have you ever read it? It's a children's book. It's a beautiful book. I'm just going to extract one piece of it. There's these two souls in heaven, and they're best friends, and they're playing, and da-da-da-da-da. And the one soul, I can't remember off the top of my head. I can't remember what it was, but give or take, this is the gist. Says, hey, when we go back to Earth, will you teach me patience? I can't remember exactly what the thing was off the top of my head. And he says, yeah, but you're not going to like me. Like, I'm going to teach it to you, and we're best friends now. But when we go down to Earth, because it's a soul contract, you're not going to like me. And he's like, that's impossible. And so your story, that story was so, you know, as a father listening to it, for like, if it was one of my kids, if it happened to me, you know. So do you think you had a soul contract with Miss Askoff? Because the story seemed to like set course for so many positive things.
Right. I feel like every interaction that we go through is a lesson, right? Sometimes it's an easy, beautiful lesson. Sometimes it's a hard lesson, but it's a lesson nonetheless. Sometimes we encounter people that show us what we don't want to be, and others that inspire us and things that we do want. So, you know, I never really thought of her as the villain, even though the story might read that way. I just look at it as like, hey, I did the first day, I didn't even remember to go memorize my address. And all the girls in the class did. They all got their milk carton back. Yeah. And then the next day, half the boys did. Now it's the final day, and it's just me and the class clown. And he got his address right. So the whole class looks at me, and I kind of freeze up. And I just, you know, and I didn't know what to do. And I just got quiet. And so she threw it away. And I kind of said in the moment, like, man, I'm stupid. And I made, and it was like this ambition was born to prove that I wasn't, you know? So, and that's healthy to a degree. And then eventually it's not, right? Eventually you're like, okay, like you can't be fully expressed. You can't always be present. You're not willing to take chances sometimes, because I was trying to like control, like, could I sound smart here? And sometimes I'd use words that made me sound smarter than I was because of the insecurity. But it did create that ambition to go after things. Now, I saw this video once that Steve Harvey was like, you know, I had a teacher that told me I couldn't make it, so I send him a TV every year. And I'm like, why? Like why throw it in their face? Like, obviously it was motivating and to you, and you know, but maybe let the bitterness go. I don't think it's healthy to have that bitterness and chip on the shoulder. I mean, I know a lot of athletes kind of use that as motivation. You know? But I think in the world of business, we don't have to have that motivation. It can just simply be about being expressed, serving people, solving problems. I feel really good when I help people. I feel really good when they, you know, like, this is cool, because I used to do a lot of real estate. No tenant ever sent me a letter. No tenant was ever like, you're an amazing landlord. Not once, but people that read my books. I just got a note in the mail yesterday, a handwritten note from someone that's giving out my wealth breakthrough experience tonight. One of my employees just said, I'm so glad that you created this. I'm loving my life. Like, that's really, you don't need to have chip on your shoulder and prove everybody wrong. If you just accept that we all have greatness in us, it's just a lot of people hide it because of some incident that they never healed from.
Yeah. And I agree with you. It's like, it's sometimes it's really good to have an edge. You just got to know when to get rid of the edge. thank the edge, appreciate the edge for what it got you to, and then the power of letting that go. All right, I want to talk about your books because I love books. And I heard something on a podcast today. I am so mad at myself because for almost 3,000 episodes, I've been asking people what their favorite books are. And I was listening to a podcast today and they said to the guest, what's your favorite book? And they said, because we catalog and have a website of the guest with their favorite book. And I thought, I forgot to do that part of it. So I'm going to actually start today with this. But before, at the end, I'll ask you what your favorite book is. But I want to talk about the power of books. I've always loved books. Actually, not since I really didn't start reading until I was about 18 years old. But it always amazed me how somebody would take a lifetime of researching other people's lifetimes, frankly, and advice, and then put it in something for anywhere between $9.95 and $19.95. And you can really change your life, your mindset. You have a lot of books. I just want to read them off for the listeners. Money Unmasked, Killing Sacred Cows 2.0, What Would the Rockefellers Do, Disrupting, and then slashed out, Killing Sacred Cows, and then a children's book, I Am Money and I Don't Grow on Trees. That one, I love that one. All right, so let's talk about your books for a second. And let's start with the one that you got a letter from. Which book did you get a letter from?
So Money Unmasked. That book definitely is really helpful into where we're at today. And I think like with you and what you talk about with building a life plan, the whole notion of that book is how do you design a game worth playing than you've already won and find the win in the work. So it's helping people heal their relationship with money because a lot of people see it as an enemy instead of an ally and an asset because they feel it feels complicated. And I really help people move to the abundance mindset around it in that book, and then just design a life that they don't want to retire from, because go ahead.
No, I want to keep on going, but I want you to I want to talk about abundance mindset because I do think that a lot of times people have an unhealthy or negative relationship with money, and that gets in the way.
It does. There's a lot of fear around it. There's a lot of greed. There's a lot of jealousy. There's a lot of, feeling complex. There's vilifying it. And I mean, if people think that it's the root of evil, then they don't want to be evil. So they kind of push it away. Right. There's a lot of like baggage, and a lot of that baggage comes from things that people that we love and care about said when we were growing up before our brain was fully formed. And then somehow we take that on in an unconscious belief that plays out as a limitation. And then people get really confused and they think love and money are the same thing. So they think if they have enough money, then they're going to get the love that they want and deserve. But at the same time, maybe sacrifice the very life that they would love to have because they're chasing something versus enjoying the process along the way. And that's tough. I mean, I have a hard time sometimes just being present, enjoying the process, but I'm reminded of it constantly because of the things that I write and the things that I talk about. Because sometimes I think we write about the things we need most. Yeah. And I want to be a very present person because I think wealth is our ability to be present. Yeah. And if you be present, everything's fine in the moment. It's usually when we're recounting the past or worried about the future, which takes us into that scarcity versus the power that we have in the present.
I think the best of the best, I see it in my work all the time, the people I coach, I see it in myself. I think the best of the best, to your point, teach their pain, right? Like sometimes you don't know why you are going through certain things, but then like you, I love to help people. I like to help people get unstuck and think bigger, right? What's their next 0.01% level of potential? And so what pain did you have to go through to teach what you're teaching?
Well, I when I first started, thought that money was something to be, held on to tightly. I believed in kind of that play not to lose scarcity mindset. I came from, my dad was a coal miner. My grandfathers were coal miners. Even my great grandfather was a coal miner. So if the mines went on strike, then money felt scarce. And, my great grandfather came from Italy to America while his wife was pregnant and didn't get to meet his daughter until she was a couple years old because he was living in a tent, saving up enough money. And so that level of scarcity is almost like folklore that gets passed down from generation to generation. I had to heal from that because I really believed like, hey, I just am going to save more than anyone else. And saving is not the way to wealth. No one shrinks their way to wealth. Value creation is the game. But part of that value creation is we have to be willing to invest in ourselves, take a leap of faith on our ability to create that value and solve problems and serve others. And so I had to heal from that like miserly mindset, where we had plenty of money, but we weren't spending any of it, or we had plenty of money, but my wife was like, what good does this money do? It's what's the difference between someone that's broke and doesn't go to Italy and someone that has all the money and won't go to Italy? It's, the outcomes are pretty much the same. And so thankfully she was patient and also, really direct with some things. And I just did a lot of work to figure it out. And that's why I was able to write some of the books that I did, is because when that paradigm shift happened, life got exponentially better quickly. It wasn't a slow process. Yeah. It was a paradigm shift, and I saw the world differently, which meant I behaved completely differently. I really went all in on investing in myself, and then eventually investing in my team, and just looking at how we can expand instead of shrink.
So rewind with me a little bit, because you talk about the lineage of your family as coal miners, giving kind of inheriting a perception of money. You healed, as you put it, and then kind of broke the chains. Okay. Yeah. So now how are you messaging this to your kids, right? How are you breaking the chains and then shifting it for them?
Yeah. So one thing that we do is every quarter we do a family retreat. We did one at our cabin October last year. We just got back from a 2-week one in Hawaii, because my kids are now 18 and 21, and it might be the last one we get them for that long. Oh,
wait, your kids are 18. I just want to interrupt because I watched the video on your website. I was so moved.
They were 7 and 9 at that time. Yeah, 7 and 9 in that video.
By the video on your website. So my kids are 20 and 23, so I know what that feels like. And we did a trip a couple of years ago thinking like, this is like before everybody kind of launches, right? Yep. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that video is funny because my youngest says, hey, what does dad do for a living? And my wife goes, well, there wasn't really a job for him, so he just created his own. He's like, what do you mean create his own? That sounds cool. He's like, that's an entrepreneur. He's like, I want to be an entrepreneur. Correct. And my 9-year-old said, my dad's just like me. He doesn't give up, when I'm playing a video game. And I was just like, those were cool moments because they weren't scripted. It was just the person asking him questions. It really meant a lot to me to hear them say that, you know. And my son just wrote a letter for college. And I was kind of, as a writer, I was going through all of his essays and kind of giving him some feedback and doing some edits. And then the third letter was saying that I was his hero. So I didn't have any edits on that one, John. I just said it could stay as is. But it was really kind of cool because he's like talking about the example of me working out, the conversations we've had around money, how it's like, my wife's like, I do the hard work and you lead by example. What gives? He writes a letter about you. I'm like, I know, because she definitely does so much of the, day to day. But that's, these quarterly retreats that you do are really important.
Yeah. Tell me what you do at these retreats.
So we start with like really simple questions like, hey, how am I doing as a dad on a scale 1 to 10? And how could I do better? And, what's one thing that you're working on that we could support you with? What are you most excited about? But we actually, in October, we went through what's called a family constitution, which is the preamble to our trust in our own words. And it's the parameters and incentives that we create. So there's signposts and guidelines for future generations. And we unveiled that fully to them saying, hey, this is what we want. We want to cover the down payment for your first home. We would even be willing to finance the home. You'll have to pay interest to the trust and you'll still have to qualify. But that means there's a little bit less stress of going through the bank process, which takes a lot of time and it requires a lot of money that won't be required anymore. And I want you to focus that on what could you do in this world? What's your career going to be about? I don't want to give you so much money that you don't want a career, and I don't want to give you so little that the career seems daunting. I want to give you just enough that you feel supported, incentivized, and that you could do this on your own, but you don't have to. And so we went through that family constitution, talked about if they do an entrepreneurial pursuit, what percentage, up to 10%, that we would be willing to fund, what would happen if they didn't fulfill that entrepreneurial pursuit to ever get money again. We talked to them about if they want to be part of masterminds or coaching or things outside of the classroom, that we'd be willing to support up to 50% as an incentive to help them get going with those kind of things, but they have to complete it all the way through before they can get any additional money. So we talked about really pragmatic stuff like that, but then we played hearts, then we watched The Office, then we did a project around around the cabin just to get them doing a little hard labor because I think that they've had it a little bit easier than other kids. And then when they were done at like 4:00 on Sunday, we just let them go. We still had a third of the agenda to get through, but I'm like, I could tell that they were toast and we could always bring it to the next quarter. And so there's a few things that we do is one, rituals that, when they're little, were morning rituals where I'd ask them what they're grateful for, what would make it a great day, and what mantras they want to kind of say to reinforce their best beliefs. And then my wife would put them in bed and say, what was your high today? What was your low? And what did you learn from each? And so those are rituals. And then traditions are the things that bring them back. These quarterly retreats. What are the things that would be fun for them? What are the things that they would want to come back to do these things? And maybe they're going to have to be shorter in the future because they've got friends, or they maybe will have a family, and we don't want to be intrusive. We want to be inviting, but we try to make it as fun as possible. So they go, yeah, that's something I look forward to. I'll tell you, now they're 18 and 21. They don't look forward to it like they did when they were younger.
Yeah.
They would rather hang with their friends or do other things, but we've made it intriguing enough that they'll still come and do it without complaint.
Oh my God. I love every word of that. I think it's great. That should be your next book, right? Family meetings, retreats. And I love that. Let's talk about being an entrepreneur. Your son in the video talked about it. You referenced it. It was a really, really cute part. Yeah, dad's like me. I loved that piece of it. You were Entrepreneur of the Year in high school. And so just kind of talk about that and then what that did for you.
What was really cool is I played sports, but I wanted to earn money. And so my parents were like, well, what's the best way to do that? And my dad was a coal miner that brought the surface vehicles home from the mine when the bosses were in town. I'd help him clean them. He's like, you could probably just clean vehicles. I've taught you what to do, and we've got the supplies. So I went to the president of the credit union, because my mom worked at the credit union, and said, hey, what if I were to clean the repossessed vehicles? He's like, all right, that's fair. We'll give you the contract. And then where at the school district, I went and talked to the principal, and I just started to detail vehicles of different teachers and people working in the administration and get them back to them by the end of the day. And so I had this car detailing business, which also meant I got entered into competitions, Students in Free Enterprise, young entrepreneur competitions, which meant that I had other people that my mom knew that said, hey, will you help my son learn about income statements and balance sheets? And will you help him with marketing plans? And so there was just a small community where people really, chipped in, and they thought it was great. Like I had a teacher that helped me make air fresheners and, order all sorts of, floor mats with my logos and little garbage bags and put special touches. And that's what helped me kind of win the Young Entrepreneur of the Year for the SBA when I was still a teenager. It came with the governor's entrepreneur came with $5,000. That's how I got into the money world. It's like, I want to invest this. I thought it was a lot of money, John. To me, it was, I didn't realize how inside. But that's how I got into wanting to grow that and wanting to invest that. That's how I ended up getting an internship when I was 19 years old and still going to school, that got me down the finance route. And I had a professor that used to manage $5 billion in municipal bond funds that took me under his wing and really helped me out and kind of mentored me. He gave our class $250,000 to invest. So I just learned a lot from these guys. And I don't know, I just was always fascinated with that world, because I saw when my family didn't have enough money, my great grandfather was separated from his wife and didn't meet his daughter till she was a couple years old. And I saw like the level of fear when the mines would go on strike or there was a coal mining disaster and, what that would feel like. I didn't even realize early on that my parents would be eating saltine crackers because my grandparents were feeding me because of something that would happen with the mines. And so, I always felt like if you get your money stable, you can really swing for the fences in your life. You could really enjoy it along the way. And it doesn't have to be something that people are afraid of or just scrimping. I just feel like so much in finance doesn't consider quality of life. Yeah. And I think you're your greatest asset. And if you have a good quality of life, sometimes financial planning is at odds with that because it's only about 30 years from now. And it's about scrimping and sacrificing and budgeting. But you know what? For an entrepreneur, sometimes budgeting makes them go broke because maybe the best thing they could do would be invest in an employee or in a coach or an infrastructure. And if they're getting in this miserly mindset, they starve out the business, which is their wealth engine, just to fund something they know nothing about with no cash flow, locked away till 59 and a half. I think that it's time, for people to understand there's better ways.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing to me, Garrett, that they really don't teach the art of money in school. They don't teach, maybe unless
they would probably teach it poorly, John. I don't know if we want.
By the way, they probably would. Yeah. And in my opinion, and I think we're on the same page, school needs to change. They need to be teaching people about money. They need to be teaching about things that you're talking about. They need to be teaching people about how to actually start a business, like legitimately start a business, not the theory of it, but really how to do it. You see this a lot when doctors and sometimes attorneys graduate. They don't know actually the business side of things, and so I think it's so important. I want to talk about a couple things. Start off with an abundant mindset. An abundant mindset, people can watch a TED Talk and people can read a book, but when you have been wired to have a fixed mindset and not abundant, it's really hard. It's really hard to rewind that. So what will the reader get out of your books or your multiplying program that will begin to shift things for the employees? I think today there's a responsibility to employees to I'm going to put yours under almost like a wellness umbrella as well, right? Because it's a rebirth and re-understanding of money. And so how do you make an impact of change in the mindset when it comes to this?
Well, one thing I have them do is have them take their money persona quiz and show them there's two sides of every persona. There's the winning side and the shadow side. And there's a formula that helps you be on the winning side that comes from abundance. And when you're in isolation or when you're in scarcity, it's going to move you to that shadow side, which is going to limit the results. So just having the awareness that there's a process, that when people are in the abundant mindset, they're in co-creation. They think about delegation and collaboration. When people are in scarcity, they think about hustle, grind, and doing it on their own. They think about, that isolation, and that isolation is gateway to scarcity. So having that awareness is the first piece. And so we go through those money personas, and then I take them through this value index exercise, which is what happens when they, I just go, hey, what if you have an extra $10 per month, 100, 1,000? I take it all the way up. And at what point do they flip the switch and stop thinking what money could do for them and what they could do for others with their money? And so I put them in that place where it kind of trains the mind. So that's the Money Unmasked book that we talked about. But my multiplier program, I teach every week. And every week I'm either teaching on make more, keep more, grow, or multiply your money. So it's more about me helping them understand financial freedom is a state of mind, and it's a perspective more than it is a state of having. And so how do we help them get to that place of abundance and make that shift by getting them engaged, asking them questions? But they get a one-on-one results facilitator that we go through their entire financial house and make sure it's in order. So are they financially fit? Then number two, what do they create financial independence? Enough cash flow from assets to cover their expenses so they could swing for the fences in their business. And then we have I've partnered with accountants and attorneys so that we can provide the full services, because a lot of times an entrepreneur goes, okay, I know I'm paying too much in tax, but when I talk to this attorney, it's different than what the accountant says, and it becomes convoluted and confusing. So we've simplified that by giving them a quarterback and then build out that team. If they have something handled, we give them a stamp of approval. If not, we can get it handled and done for them in a very efficient manner. So our big goal is find money they can reinvest back into their life and their business, not take money away from them.
So is Multiplier a class that people can take online, or do you go into companies and teach it?
So people go through a discovery process with us and report of findings, and then we can show them the results that we can provide for them. And then they get a one-on-one person to facilitate for them. And then I teach live once a week, but then it goes into an app where they can review that at any time and rewatch it. So it's very interactive. It's not just online. It's one-on-one. But we work in all 50 states and Canada.
It's amazing. And so give me, because I think people learn through story. If you can maybe share a story of somebody who came to you who was, completely fixed, completely down, zero abundance mindset, and just kind of the quick gist story of how they began to kind of shift and maybe the life they're living now.
Yeah, we had someone, Brad, that came to us, and he had a dental practice, and he was thinking about just selling it and selling everything he had and moving into an apartment because he was burned out. He was doing so much on his own. And we talked to him about this concept of soul purpose and the concept of what do you enjoy about dentistry versus what don't you enjoy about dentistry? And actually years later, he ended up teaching other burned out dentists how he did the same thing and, was able to help them out. But the first thing we did is we went in and saved him some tax. And with that breathing room, we said, let's hire someone so that you're not doing so much yourself. Let's just have someone that can assist you, because we found the money through the tax savings. Then we restructured loans, which improved cash flow even more. And so there was more breathing room. We started to build a little bit of savings, get him some time off. Like, it was just really about finding the cash to do the things that he wanted to do, because he was so kind of time for money, doing so much himself, and kind of got stuck in that miserly mindset. So we freed that up by finding the cash and then doing the proper hires to allow him to be more productive and then not burn out, take some time off, do some things he enjoys.
And how much, because I think you and I are in the same, we have something in common when we work with people, and that is kind of put a mirror up a little bit to raise their level of awareness. And
right.
once that level of awareness is seen, a lot of times it sounds like you do this too. When I work with individuals, I'm kind of pointing things out that are hidden in plain sight to me. Mm-hmm. And then when you kind of point something out, it's like, it can be life-changing.
It's the elusive obvious, right? It's like, once you see it, you can't unsee it, but when you don't see it, it's got a grip on you.
Correct. And so, what is that investment worth? Many will say priceless.
Right.
But there's the person that will continue to just be stuck in their misery and not invest in themselves. And then the person that is stuck in their misery that wakes up one day and says, I got to do something. Like, talk to me. It's like, talk to that person who's like not doing anything, but on the verge of, I got to do something. What do they do?
Look, I think that this is the formula for accelerated results. First is, a lot of people just don't know what they want because they're in too much pain. So I think having a mentor, and a mentor's job is to ask you the questions you know how to ask yourself to get clear about what you want. When you're clear about what you want, then you can have a coach that tells you, here's exactly what to do to get where you want. So for example, I knew that I wanted to see what it was like to be in single digit body fat. And when I told this coach, he's like, that's what I knew. He's like, great, here's your food plan, here's your workout plan. It was never been so easy. He says,
How old are you?
I'm 47.
All right. So yeah, I'm 54. Harder as you get older. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was just like, but once he said, here's the plan, follow the plan. There was no guesswork. Food became easy. Workouts, I knew exactly what to do. There's no guesswork. So mentoring, coaching, then systems. What systems help reinforce it on a daily basis so that you have more success? And then the fourth thing is accountability. I feel like we pay attention to that which we pay for. So, accountability could be through that. It could be through meeting with someone one-on-one. It could be through reporting. It could be through penalties. I mean, there's a number of ways. Everybody's built differently, but mentoring, coaching, systems, and accountability, that's what helps us accelerate results. And if we try to do too much on our own because we think we're saving money, we're spending time in order to save money. Yeah. I would rather spend money in order to save time. And so we have to get in that mindset in order to do that. And that'll help get those results.
Yeah. Where does your grit and your hustle come from? Is it something you were born with, or is it something, that you can point to that ignited it?
Well, I think that there's a couple things. One is, I just want to provide so much for my family and extended family. I feel like, with my great grandfather coming over, providing a potential better life, it landed where I'm doing really well. And I'd like that to be something that I could spread throughout, and be able to help people. And I know that I feel better when I help people. Like, I sold the company in 2021 and then took some time off, like a few months. And I was really bored during those few months. It's just, there's not much to do if I'm not engaged in valuable work. I did do comedy, and I got my comedy special on Amazon Prime, and that was a ton of fun.
Do?
Yeah. So books and comedy special. Yeah. It's called The American Ream on Amazon Prime.
I'm gonna have to check that out.
It's a comedy special around money. So I thought that'd be kind of fun to, just be more expressed and do something that from the time I was a kid was something I was in love with. And, my family, my uncles were funny. My dad's funny. It was just the thing that I always felt like love and family. So it was going to be a hobby, and it turned into more than that because I created the space for it. And it was one of the most fun adventures I went on in my life. But then I was like, I don't want to be a touring comedian. I checked that box, scratched that itch after 2 tours. I was like, cool. That was fun. That's
cool. And the company you sold, tell me about that.
So I built this company, I bought a company in 2014, and I loved that it gave us more capability online because we were only, pretty much one-on-one. And now all of a sudden we had courses and things, and allowed us to be, reach more people and do better with marketing. And as we started to grow that, I just had someone in that business that we did not share the same values. They were very much like, they're very old school. Everybody thought they were in the military. They weren't, but just not a lot of fun. Yeah. And so I just decided life was going to be more fun than just that drudgery. So I sold to him, and then basically took a little time off. And then now I've built up Multiplier, which is with the team that I love, doing what I love in a way that's more sustainable than that one was.
Yeah. I started my company, my coaching company 11 years ago, June 1st. And it's great having a business that you can just be yourself and love what you do. What advice do you give somebody today? Today as we're recording this will air in May 2026. What advice do you give the entrepreneur today? The entrepreneur today, there's a lot of things that remain the same. There's a lot of things that are different today. Used to be, 30 years ago, you look at a company, for every 10 people, you want to make sure they're bringing in $1 million. Today, you can have a one-person company with a couple virtual assistants, maybe 1 or 2 full-time people, and have a ridiculously successful company. Many people suggest that billion and trillion dollar companies will be 10 people or less moving forward. So what are some of the things as an entrepreneur today that have not changed? And what are some of the things that have changed?
What hasn't changed is if you don't have good feedback, you don't have a good company. You have to be willing to hear from your employees. You have to be willing to hear from your customers. And so that a lot of people are defensive and they just want to have people say how great they are. I think a good feedback, it allows for a company to grow and improve. And so feedback is essential. Today, we can get feedback a lot faster than we used to as well, especially with a lot of the AI tools that are extraordinarily helpful. Also, you could get more done with fewer people. I think that it's like the concern I have is so many people are trying to do too much with AI at the expense of the individual. I want AI to help my people have more superpowers. I want it to help deliver more value to our customers. I want to make it more affordable, not cut people out and then all of a sudden be one person that's doing everything with AI around it. Because by the way, if that ever did work where you could have one person have all AI, who's going to be around to buy stuff? Someone's got to be able to make money to buy things. So, I think we have to bring everyone together and make it better, not just kind of, isolate and cut everybody out and make it non-human. I think that, more than ever now, community and connection is going to matter. People want to, we just had an event a couple of days ago, 2 days. People loved it. Everyone texted, everyone wrote a letter. Everyone is so excited to be around each other. Yeah. And so that relationship capital in today's world, I think, is even more valuable than it was in the past. And that community really matters. So, but we have to move faster these days than we used to, because we can research so much quicker. We can get data so much quicker. And we can make those decisions so much quicker on analytics, not just on intuition. I think there's a mix between how do we become an artist and how do we become a business person and find that sweet spot in between so that we're not so mechanical that we lose its soul and we're not enjoying it, or that we're so artistic that nobody buys it. There's that sweet spot. And I feel like most entrepreneurs are just artists in business clothing. So how do you find that way where you've got data that supports you, but isn't the only thing that drives you?
Yeah, no, so well said. And I agree. I've been doing a lot of postings lately on just get the meeting, go to a meeting. Like that's a big differentiator today, because I agree with you. People just want to feel connected and get to know people. In your video, your mom is in the video, your dad's in the video. What's one lesson that they, whether, by example, or, you mentioned your wife, your wife said she does all the work, you lead by example. So, what did your parents do by example or teach you that you still kind of incorporate in your world today?
My mom would move mountains for us. So we know that even if she would say something behind your back, she'd be the first one to show up to support you, even if she didn't love all the decisions you made, she's going to be there no matter what. And my dad, he taught me you can never buy back the memories you never have. He's like, so if you work too much and you miss out on life, then you miss out on life. And so it's not worth missing out on too much just in the name of, work.
Yeah, that's great. All right. So a couple things. Your books, I just want to go through each book and one takeaway that the reader is going to get from each book. I'm sure there's more, but I just want to kind of highlight the books that I have. Money Unmasked, one takeaway.
Kill your relationship with money.
Killing Sacred Cows 2.0.
Permission to succeed, because you'll find out where the myths are and be able to avoid them so that you can have more abundant mindsets and success.
What would the Rockefellers do?
How, no matter where you start, how you can create a lasting legacy.
Disrupting killing sacred cows.
Yeah, that's the follow-up. Where does scarcity come from, and how do we address it at its source?
I am money and I don't grow on trees. Children's book.
You are your greatest asset. Invest in yourself.
Quick speed round. Book that made the biggest impact on you.
Killing Sacred Cows was my first book. So that book, you know, just to write it, but the writing process of Money Unmasked took longer than any other book. And I didn't have a co-author. I didn't have a ghostwriter. So I became an author during that process. It took years. I had the discoveries. I became a different person in that writing process.
I love it. What about just a different book, not your own, that made a big impact on you?
You know, I really love The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. I listen to it every year. I just love that.
I talk about I've read all of his books.
Yeah. Turning Prose, fantastic as well. And
I've read all of his books. He is hands down one of my top 3 favorite authors. I talk about that book almost every day, because the book defines what to the listeners. You've heard me talk about this if you listen to the show, and my clients, why we resist what we need to do most. It is such a great book.
Oh.
Yeah. Best piece of wisdom you would give an entrepreneur today?
Build the life you love.
Finish this sentence. The very first thing to build the life you love that you need to do is?
Forgive yourself.
That's a good one. All right, good. That's episode 2. All right. Tell everybody where they can connect with you, learn more about you, sign up for your programs, get your books.
Yeah, DM me Garrett B. Gunderson, and I'll hook you up with my books. I'll hook you up with one of the books. Just say which one it is. Is it the Rockefellers that stood out, or is it Killing Sacred Cows? Just DM me and put John, Coffee with John, and we'll hook you up with the book. That's a great way. You can go to GarrettGunderson.com as well. But I have, I post videos on YouTube and Instagram primarily.
It's great. This was a great talk. I'm really grateful for your time and what you built and
thank you.
What you've shared. To the listeners, I'll leave you all with this. Do what you got to do, and make sure, I'm just going to kind of, tap into the book. Don't resist what you know you need to do. I think you talked about a lot of stuff today, Garrett, that people need to do, and it's up to them. They can read as much as they can and watch as much as they can, but you got to take action. A riddle, sometimes when I'm speaking, I show this picture of 4 frogs on a log. And I'll say to the audience, 5 frogs are sitting on a log, 4 decide to jump off. How many frogs are left on the log? And really, most people don't get it right, or they get, nervous that they're going to answer wrong. But the answer is 5, because they just decided, they didn't take action. So I think, to the listener today, to the coffee community, take action. Take action on one small thing today, whether it's, finding a mentor, finding a coach, building a system, having somebody hold you accountable, reading one page, doing something that take action. You can reach Garrett at GarrettGunderson.com. You can reach me at JohnDwoskin.com. Garrett, thank you so much. Really appreciate you.
Thanks for having me on, man. Appreciate it.